The 15th of September 1940, 11:30 a.m. Over the skies of southern England, a German fighter pilot leaned closer to his cockpit glass and laughed. Below him, a lone British aircraft climbed awkwardly into the clouds, its movements slightly stiff, slightly unnatural. Through binoculars, the German pilot noticed something strange about the man inside the enemy cockpit. He has no legs. One of them reportedly joked over the radio, believing the sight was either an illusion or proof of Allied desperation. What they did not know was that this so-called legless pilot would soon turn their laughter into fear. This is the shocking truth. A man who could barely walk without metal limbs would go on to destroy 21 enemy fighters in the skies of World War II. He did not fight with sympathy. He fought for skill, and he did not survive by luck, but by discipline, instinct, and defiance of everything doctors said was impossible. How does a pilot without legs fly a combat aircraft that requires precise foot control? How does a man once told he would never fly again become one of the most dangerous opponents in the sky? And how did mockery turn into respect, and eventually into silence? The engines roared. Machine guns rattled, black smoke twisted across the clouds, and in the middle of this chaos was a man who had already lost more than most soldiers ever would. He had lost his legs. He had lost his career. And yet, he refused to lose the sky, while bombs fell in British cities and civilians hid in shelters. This pilot climbed into his cockpit every day, knowing one mistake meant death. Not because he was fearless, but because he believed that disability was not the end of purpose. German pilots soon learned not to underestimate the aircraft with the unusual pilot inside. They began calling him the man who should not be flying. His enemies did not know his name at first. They only knew the result: burning aircraft, falling wreckage, and a presence in the air that refused to retreat. This is not a story about one nation's victory. This is a story about a human being who challenged fate itself. From hospital beds to burning skies, from metal legs to metal wings, his journey would become one of the most unbelievable chapters of the war in the air. And this is how the background of that story began. To understand why this story matters, one must look back before World War II. To a time when the sky was still considered a place only for the strongest bodies and fastest reflexes. Flying a fighter aircraft in the 1930s and 1940s demanded physical perfection. Pilots used foot pedals to control the rudder, balance turns, and line up gunfire. Losing even one leg meant automatic removal from service. Losing both meant the end of any aviation career, permanently. This is where Douglas Bader's story becomes extraordinary. In 1931, long before the war began, Bader was a young Royal Air Force pilot known for daring stunts and aggressive flying. During a low-level aerobatic maneuver, his aircraft crashed. Both his legs were shattered. Surgeons amputated them above the knee. Military authorities declared him unfit for flight. His uniform was taken. His wings were symbolic only. He was sent home as a civilian. For years, the world believed his story was finished. Then came 1939, and then 1940. Germany launched a massive air campaign against Britain. Cities burned. Factories were targeted. Radar stations were attacked. The Battle of Britain had begun. The British Royal Air Force needed every trained pilot it could find. Yet, even in desperation, a man with 2 artificial legs seemed an impossible choice. Regulations still considered him unfit. Aircraft cockpits were not designed for prosthetics. Emergency exits required jumping. Landings demanded pressure control with feet. Everything about warplanes rejected his condition. But Bader refused to accept this reality. He trained himself to walk, run, and climb using metal limbs. He learned to control rudder pedals with prosthetics. He practiced emergency drills again and again. Against medical advice and administrative resistance, he demanded another chance to fly. His persistence coincided with Britain's darkest hour. By the summer of 1940, German bombers and fighters crossed the English Channel daily. The sky became a battlefield. Aircraft such as the Spitfire and Hurricane were the last line of defense between invasion and survival. In this moment of crisis, a man once grounded by fate returned to the cockpit. The importance of this event lies not in nationality, but in symbolism. A pilot with no natural legs flying against one of the most powerful air forces in history challenged the definition of human limits. It reshaped ideas of disability, courage, and warfare. It also exposed the psychology of war. German pilots who initially mocked him did so because war dehumanizes opponents, but soon, his record forced them to respect the skill behind the machine. This background leads directly into the main story, where metal legs met metal wings, where ridicule became fear, and where one man's return to the sky turned into a lesson written in smoke and fire. Where this background ends, the battle truly begins. The 12th of July, 1940, 6:20 a.m. The engine of the Spitfire coughed, then roared alive. Inside the cockpit, Douglas Bader adjusted his straps carefully. Two artificial legs rested against the rudder pedals. Every movement had to be exact. One mistake meant death, not only because of enemy fire, but because bailing out with metal limbs was nearly impossible. Radar stations had reported incoming enemy formations. Bombers and fighters crossed the channel like dark insects. Squadrons scrambled into the sky. Bader climbed with the others, pushing his aircraft upward through clouds stained with morning light. At 15,000 feet, the first enemy fighters appeared. Sleek machines, fast and confident. Over the radio, a voice mocked, "Look at that cripple climbing so slow." The laughter faded when Bader rolled his aircraft and dived directly into their formation. He fired first. His guns rattled. One enemy fighter spiraled downward in flames. Shock replaced mockery. A second fighter tried to circle behind him, but Bader turned sharply, pressing his prosthetic feet hard against the pedals. The aircraft obeyed. A burst of fire shattered the enemy cockpit. Another plane fell. This became the rhythm of his war. Climb, dive, fire, escape. He relied on surprise and discipline rather than brute force. His lack of legs forced him to fly with precision. He could not afford reckless maneuvers. Each attack was calculated. Weeks passed. The skies became crowded with battle. Bombers aimed for factories and cities. Fighters tangled above them like angry birds. Bader led his squadron in tight formations, teaching them to strike quickly and withdraw before being surrounded. One afternoon, clouds swallowed the sun. Visibility dropped. A sudden explosion rocked his aircraft. Shrapnel pierced the fuselage. Smoke filled the cockpit. Bader felt the plane shudder. He fought the controls, guiding the damaged machine back toward friendly territory. The landing was rough. The aircraft skidded across the runway and stopped inches from disaster. Ground crews stared in disbelief. A man with no legs had returned from combat again. Losses came too. A young pilot in his squadron failed to return one evening. Another was wounded and removed from service. War did not reward courage with safety. It only demanded more. In August, the battles grew heavier. Enemy aircraft increased in number. New weapons appeared. Cannons replaced machine guns on some fighters. Explosions were louder, more destructive. Bader adapted, studying enemy tactics, predicting their turns, leading his pilots like a chess player moving pieces in the sky. One mission changed everything. The 19th of August, 1941, 1:10 p.m., over France. His squadron crossed the coast to escort bombers. Suddenly, enemy fighters rose from the clouds below. The sky erupted. Tracers stitched the air. One of Bader's pilots was hit and fell. Another radioed that his engine was failing. Bader attacked head-on. He destroyed one fighter, then another, but numbers closed in around him. His aircraft was struck, the cockpit filled with smoke. Control vanished. He tried to bail out. One artificial leg jammed in the cockpit. For a moment, he thought he would die trapped inside. He tore himself free. The parachute opened. Below him, France rushed upward. He landed in enemy territory. German soldiers surrounded him. One officer recognized his condition and whispered in disbelief. "You fought us without legs," Bader answered calmly. "It seems so." Captured, injured, and exhausted, he became a prisoner of war. Yet even in captivity, his war did not end. He attempted escape repeatedly. He used ropes made from bedsheets. He crawled through tunnels. He refused obedience. His enemies no longer laughed. They watched him closely. He had destroyed 21 enemy fighters before capture, not by strength of body, but by force of will. And where this battle story ends, the meaning of victory truly begins. Bader's imprisonment revealed the final test of his character. War was no longer in the sky. It was inside wire fences and concrete walls. He was placed in a camp designed to hold those who would not surrender mentally. Guards increased their watch. Escape attempts became daily battles of patience. One night, he slipped through a window using a rope made from blankets. He reached the outer fence before searchlights found him. Shots rang out. He was dragged back inside. Another time, he crawled through a tunnel dug with spoons. He reached open land but was caught days later. Each failure strengthened his resolve. The climax of his story was not another aerial victory, but survival against despair. German officers eventually confined him to a special prison for escape risks. They removed maps and tools. They believed they could break his will. Instead, he turned captivity into resistance. He encouraged other prisoners. He organized routines. He kept spirits alive. His lesson was simple. If the body is damaged, the mind must be stronger. When the war ended, he returned home. Cities were scarred. Families were broken. Millions had suffered. His personal victories meant little compared to the scale of destruction. Yet his story carried a deeper meaning. He had proven that disability did not equal helplessness. He had shown that technology could be mastered by those once excluded from it. Artificial limbs, aircraft engines, and human courage had combined into a symbol of endurance. The resolution of his story is not about defeat of enemies, but about redefining limits. He did not win because he destroyed aircraft. He won because he refused to be erased from purpose. His experience taught a lasting lesson. War does not measure worth by perfection. It measures it by persistence. Eonse side rules are made for people who are afraid to try. But history remembers something else, that even when stripped of what most would consider essential, a person can still fight for meaning. The final victory was not in numbers, but an example. He became a reminder that humans are not only shaped by what they lose, but by what they choose to become after loss. Where fear once lived, determination replaced it. Where mockery once echoed, respect followed. The sky that once rejected him became his proving ground. And so the story ends, not with fire, but with reflection. Not with explosions, but with understanding. That courage does not require wholeness. It requires decision. From metal legs to metal wings, from laughter to silence. His journey became a lesson written across history. And where the battle of machines ended, the battle of spirit was won. The war did not end with the sound of engines or the fall of bombs. It ended with silence and memory. Douglas Bader's journey left behind more than smoke trails in the sky. It left a question for every generation that followed. What defines a person? The limits of the body or the strength of the will? His story shows that loss does not always mean defeat, and that courage can grow from pain. Long after the fighting stopped, people remembered the image of a pilot climbing into his aircraft without natural legs, refusing to accept the role of victim. He became proof that fear can be confronted and that purpose can survive even after tragedy. In a world shattered by war, this message mattered as much as any victory in the air. The true meaning of his struggle was not in the number of enemy planes destroyed, but in the way he challenged assumptions about weakness and strength. He did not seek sympathy, and he did not ask for special treatment. He demanded only the chance to serve and to stand equal among others. That choice transformed him from a wounded man into a symbol of human resilience. War stories often focus on weapons and battles, but this story reminds us that the most powerful force is the human spirit. Metal legs and metal wings became instruments of survival, not domination. Each flight carried a lesson about responsibility, discipline, and inner freedom. Today, when we look back at this chapter of history, we are reminded that suffering does not cancel dignity. The skies that once echoed with gunfire now carry the memory of a man who refused to be grounded by fate. His life speaks quietly to anyone who has faced loss and wondered if meaning still exists beyond it. This reflection is not about praise or blame, but about understanding. History records his actions, but humanity learns from his example. In the end, his greatest victory was not against an enemy in the clouds, but against the belief that broken bodies must live broken lives. It endures forever. I've just said what's recorded in history. You should find out the real truth yourself. We have written the sources from which we got this story in the description of this video, and we have always been and will be supporters of the oppressed, regardless of their color, race, or country. This world and its creator are also with the oppressed. If this World War II story moved you, like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more forgotten stories of courage and survival. These histories belong to everyone and deserve to be remembered. Stay with us, and see you in the next WWII story.